Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cece's Corner. I hope everyone's well and you all had a good week. We're back, and today we have a very, very exciting topic that I think can resonate with a lot of people around my age, especially, so like in their 30s. And today we're going to talk about moving slash starting over and how that can affect our mental health or what we can do to best support ourselves. Because I feel like everybody always talks about, moving or like doing a new thing, starting over, starting their life over. But I don't think that in reality, there's a lot of people that actually look at it a little bit more realistically as to what it can cost or what it's also enabling you to learn from that experience. And of course, I know that people in their 20s have similar experiences and it's a similar age, but I think the older you get, and that's even 40s, 50s, the more there is that's potentially holding you back from making that move, making that life-changing decision, because obviously it's multifaceted. So today we're going to look at it, and specifically what I really want to highlight is I want to talk about it in the realm of giving yourself a fresh start, kind of giving yourself a blank page to restart things. And it can be in one area, it can be in different areas, it can be just generally starting over, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like moving can be one of the key elements to give yourself a fresh start, because you're obviously coming into a new environment or probably someplace you haven't been before, unless you're moving back home. But just in general, I'm talking about moving away to a different country, different city, different area, just in general, putting distance between you and what you would consider home. But of course, that doesn't mean the same for everybody. So restarting and then turning the page anew can mean something different to everybody else. It's not the same for anyone. And yeah, let's talk about why moving could potentially be helpful as a way to give yourself a fresh start, give yourself a new beginning. So physical space allows for emotional space. Obviously, it also enables us, it gives us back some agency. Oftentimes, I feel like when I'm talking with my friends and also when I'm realizing about myself, is like I oftentimes feel like I don't have a lot of agency in my life because there's so many outside factors that kind of determine how my day goes, how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, etc. Which, to be fair, is just normal daily life. But if you're moving, you can get that agency back because you kind of get to decide anew all of these things, and that's kind of nice. And then also, there's a potential safe environment that we can decide for ourselves. Not saying the old one wasn't safe, but we can decide where we want to go, how we want to live. All of those factors can create a feeling of increased safety. And then we have to remember, especially when we're talking about someone that, maybe is an anxious person or just in general has some issues with their mental health, triggers that you might experience that make you feel a certain type of way can be associated with a specific location or specific sounds in a neighborhood or any or all of those types of things. And also, of course, people, but just in general, memories are associated with places, and that is a general thing for all humans, but so are negative ones, of course. So moving away can kind of alleviate some of the pressure of just always running into those things that make you feel uncomfortable or that trigger a deeper reaction if you have some trauma reactions there. But then you can also, give yourself a fresh start and then put your best foot forward, because you can kind of present yourself in a way that maybe you weren't able to before due to circumstances, or just simply because there's people that knew you and that you have outgrown. And that kind of enables us to give ourselves like a mental reset, that we can just, start over and leave things where they belong. But then also, it may be enabling our physical health, depending where you are, because if you're moving to an area where you can increase your physical health because of the nature that's maybe surrounding it or the culture shifts, that's awesome. And I just wanted to mention it because I feel like we often focus on how we're feeling emotionally and what it does to our heads, but not so much about how maybe climate or surrounding factors can positively also affect our physical health and how we're feeling in our bodies. And then I noted down enhanced social connections through new groups. Like I said before, if you get an opportunity to present yourself with your best foot forward and present yourself as the version you've grown into, you also get to make new connections as that new person and form maybe even deeper connections with other types of people that weren't accessible to you before in the same way. And then I also wrote here increased personal growth because obviously moving to a new place means that you have to step out of your comfort zone, because if you don't know the area and you're not familiar, especially if you're moving countries, but just in general also moving from north to south or vice versa, east west, whatever, can majorly influence the way that things work. So you have to kind of be brave and do a lot of things that maybe aren't super comfortable or that you're nervous about. And then I also jotted down job opportunities, obviously, and lifestyle change, because depending on where you move, um, there's different opportunities there that maybe weren't accessible before, or there's opportunity for a slower life, a more low-cost life, or just in general, you might, for example, move to the beach and take up surfing, things like this. You know what I mean? Like, you can change entirely with where you are moving, and the communities surrounding you can change. But one of the most positive things that I encountered when I did the research was that your happiness becomes more of a focus, because that's literally the driving force um, as a motivation when you're settling into a new place. You're trying to find things that make you happy so that you can, that you can kind of keep going, that you can be persistent, that you can put your foot forward, that you can move into this new version in a new place. So you're more focused on, maybe not in the sense of, oh, what do I want to do today, but like things like, oh, what makes me feel good, what's good here, what, more focused on just in general things, like little things that make you happy. And then you also, of course, gain new perspectives, because especially if you're merging cultures, but also if you're just moving to a different place, people have a different mentality, people see life differently, and that influences you, obviously. And then also, and I found this extremely fascinating, is your brain improves, because the brain has to adapt to its new environment, but it also remembers the old one. So the wires that are coming in are being formed anew, and that can enhance your brain activity and actually, have a positive effect on your brain. And I thought that was awesome. But I've been talking so positively about moving. I also wanted to highlight a few reasons as to maybe why that's not a good thing. So first point is to simply run away from unresolved trauma. And I want to make clear, of course, if your physical safety and your emotional safety are in harm's risk, that's a good reason to go away, and wouldn't blame anybody. But if you're, someone who has some trauma and you're just having the urge to move and like rebrand yourself, which perfectly valid, but you have to understand that you can't run away from your problems. So it's best to address them either in the old place or just in general in the new place that you're moving to, simply because you are always taking yourself with you. Doesn't matter where you are, but the things that are in your mind, the things that are maybe weighing heavily on you and influence your mental health and your well-being overall, they're coming with you because it's something that's within you that's being triggered. Of course, there's outside forces, but what happens is happening inside of you. And that doesn't matter if you're in another place. It might lessen because the external stressors may not be there, and it may lessen because you can relax, which amazing. But you are taking yourself with you. So if you're feeling, let's say, anxious and depressed, you're also going to still be anxious and depressed somewhere else. Maybe less so, but never not at all, because it doesn't resolve itself like that. So I just wanted to say that as a first thing. But then also, you have, of course, a culture shock and just an adjustment culturally. And I don't just mean moving countries, but also if you're moving to a different area in your country, things are handled differently, and that's an adjustment you will have to make. There's a long-term effect when moving, of grieving things in your old life and emotionally adjusting. because situations take a long time for you to settle, like within yourself. So there's always going to be something where you're like, oh, I wish I had that. I wish I'd done that differently. I want, just to grieve the old version of you, old life, connections, whatever it may be. Just be prepared for that. But then there's also a buildup of stressors that is so important to name, because obviously if you're moving, there's a buildup before the move of things you have to organize, and then during the move you have to be aware of all these things, and then also after, because you have to reorganize yourself again. So it's a lot of stress to take on, and I think that you really have to want to be able to do it. Um, you know, really have the want to move, really have the want to do it in order for the stress and all of that to be worth it. Because even if you have somebody supporting you, which I hope, it's really hard to delegate all of the stress, because a lot of it, again, is an emotional thing. But then you also have a big chunk of uncertainty about how well you can adapt in the new place you're moving to. There's like a lot of things that you can't predict. So that's also something that's so important to keep in mind. And then the loneliness. I think if you're lonely before, you're also going to be lonely in the new place, and it might not be so different. But in your old place, hopefully you had some form of a support network, and in the new place, it's going to take a little bit. And I'm not talking about somebody who, truly had to escape their living situation and are now better off in the new one. I'm talking about regular people like me, you, and your friend, with all their problems, but still, it might take some time to get to the point where you can build a community around you. So loneliness is like a really big factor, because it's different from being lonely at home, because being lonely at home in like a familiar place is also bad, but it's a different type of lonely, because you're not so alienated, culturally, and like familiar with all the places and all that thing. But because I really want to highlight how moving can be helpful, I also looked up some things that can help, to transition into your new life. So the first thing, and it goes flawlessly into the last point that I made, build your support network in the new country, new area. So try to find like-minded people, go to community events, try to find interests, and just try and really connect with people. Also, I think, and I need to remember this, I think we are all so self-conscious that sometimes we won't enter a room and just address the fact that we're alone. We need to do that more, because I feel like there are so many people that are looking for connection, and if we're presenting ourselves as really open, we can meet people, and it doesn't need to be your bestest friends. It can be, but it doesn't need to be. But just somebody to talk to, somebody to do activities with, and just find some support in daily life. That's really important, especially if you're navigating like cultural change and stuff. And if it's somebody from the new country, that would be even more like sufficient, I feel, simply because they can help you adjust a little bit more. But then I also said, maintain some connections to the home base you've previously had. May that be friends, family, whatever, but just keep in touch with your roots in order to kind of bridge the gap. So if you're lonely, you can call someone, or if things go really wrong, you can call someone. Things, just simple things like this. And then kind of embrace a routine, and set realistic expectations. So really make sure that you adapt to a new routine that works for you, and then stick to it. And also that you aren't expecting of yourself to thrive 100,000% and everything going super well within the first month, but just giving yourself time to adapt to new situations. And then also self-compassion. Things can be quite difficult in ways you may not expect, and things can happen. And I think self-compassion is really, really important in order for you to resolve these things properly, and not, panic or any of those things. We've talked about moving as like one solution to turn the page, but I also want to talk about starting over. I think it's important to look at it both ways, because basically moving also means you're starting over, but starting over can also mean something different. So starting over can be any kind of process in your life, whether it's a new job, it's a new partner, it's just a new lifestyle, a new apartment, just anything, any process that you've gone through, like maybe, separating yourself from people that aren't good for you, things like this, transitioning, basically. So starting over, if you would categorize it, always involves an ending, a neutral zone, and then a new beginning. And the first step, the ending, basically means that you're kind of releasing who you were, or releasing parts of yourself that were you, that are no longer suited to you because you've outgrown them. And then there is a second thing. The neutral zone is kind of like an uncomfortable in between. It's a limbo phase where you're not yet who you're becoming, but you are also not fitting into who you were. And I think anybody who's ever been in that phase knows how truly, truly uncomfortable it is, because it's kind of like everything's all up in the air and it's really, truly not comfortable. But then the new beginning is called emergence, and it's when you're fully coming into who you were meant to become in one or other areas of your life. And if we're going back to the phases, so the first phase means letting something go has to happen in order for you to be able to move forward, in order to be able to grieve what you are leaving behind. Because especially if it's something that changes within you and that's not feasible to the outside, I think grieving what you once were is super important in order to kind of be able to release that part of yourself that lived so long with you and went through this life with you for such a long time. And then second part, the neutral thing. I've kind of already explained that it's kind of a limbo, and it's no longer your past, but it's also not your present. And it can mean that you're just questioning a lot of things. You're confused, you're questioning a lot of things, maybe questioning some decisions, and some uncomfortable truths may come to the surface. And I think during that part, I think it's so important that we take a deep breath and that we remind ourselves that the only way is through, and that we will get there eventually, and that patience is key, even though I myself am struggling with patience, with having patience, because obviously we want things resolved as quickly as possible, but that's just not how it works, unfortunately. So I think just being patient with ourselves during this time and like accepting that we're transitioning is the key. And then the emergence, so forming anew, basically, it happens gradually because you start to integrate like new aspects, new versions, new things, and it's not a process that can be rushed. So also here again, have some patience, because it's not going to be like you're flipping 180 and then all of a sudden you're this new person. It's going to take some work and it's going to take some time. But I think it's important to really take your time in order to integrate the right things and move on from maybe some negative things. And the reason I addressed my age group in the beginning is coming to a close here. So the 30s are usually a blind spot where people aren't really looking when they're looking for big life changes. People look for, quarter life crises, midlife crises, things like this, but don't really look to the 30s as like an area in your life where a lot changes. But especially in the 30s, there's like this really, really intense pressure oftentimes to reinvent, because this kind of gap of who you had planned to be and who you are in reality really comes to the surface. So if you're a little kid or a teenager and you're dreaming about what your adult life looks like, eventually you're going to have to face the music and realize that maybe not everything that you've ever wanted has come into fruition. So it's kind of like comparing what you thought adulthood would be and would look like to the reality, and sometimes the discrepancies just, it's not nice. So I think a lot of people struggle combining the two and making the best out of it. But then also we can't forget that there's like other external kind of pressures that come to mind in the 30s, and that's biological. But then we have financial pressure and also changing relationships. So biological, people are gonna scream, "Oh, she's talking about kids." No. So your body starts to age, and in the 30s, things can unexpectedly pop up that were a problem prior. So That's what I mean by biological. It's just health concerns and like physical changes that you're going through because your body's maturing, like I mentioned in the last week's video, but then also just you're becoming older and your body just sometimes it's not fun. But then also, every move that you make, every decision you make can potentially have a financial impact. We're not really taught this, but every move that we make has a consequence. Your job, it can affect your housing situation, family situation, whatever there may be, but it's all costing you something. And oftentimes actual money. And then also relationships vary. Relationships with your family vary, also partnerships, friendships, all of those things become, so to say, boiled down to the essentials because there's so many life changes going on for everybody that the amount of time that you have to spend with somebody is like limited. And all of this combined is very, very stressful. So 30s, stressful period, while also being one of the best ones there yet, like I also previously mentioned. But I think it's really important to remember that the future is not dedicated by the past. That's something that I tell myself a lot. It's basically about ensuring that you and your future versions can live the best life possible. So all of this work we're currently doing, we're doing it for our future selves so that they can have the most beautiful possible life. And we have to always weigh whether or not the sacrifices are worth it. But I just want to conclude this by saying what is helpful when you are starting over in your life in general, when you're evolving, doing something new, and taking that risk, taking that leap. Sorry. So small steps better than big jumps because it's easier to adjust to. And then also a routine to help build the new habits, super helpful in the beginning, especially. And then resets that you're making and doing, they're a process and they're continuous. It's not just one thing and then it's done because it's like a ripple effect. There's so many steps coming after and little tiny ones before. So just keep that in mind. And then I said, feel all the feelings because it's normal that there's emotional attacks coming with changing things, especially if it's fundamental things. So I think that's super important. And then take care of yourself, watch out for your well-being, just make sure that you're kind to yourself. Focus on small victories over the really big wins because the small victories are the ones that lead to the big win. So really celebrate those little things in between. And then you can improve on your own terms. You can decide what an improvement is for yourself and how you want to determine that. And just remember that failure in the sense of maybe not clicking straight away or things not working out right away the way that you want them to go, that's part of the deal. So setbacks are also normal. And I think to finish this long video off, just want to remind everyone that life isn't stagnant and neither are we. And we determine how things go. We determine what we do in most cases, of course, excluding like extreme cases of life circumstances. But it does not have to end at a certain milestone, doesn't have to end at a certain vision, and it does not stay the same. You have the influence to change things if you want. And it's necessary for us to evolve. Contrary to what we were told, which was this fantasy ending that you have the house, you have the husband, you have the children, and you're done. No, there's life past that. We need to look past that. We need to look past these visions and see what the reality is and how we can make it better for ourselves. And that's where I'm going to leave it off. If you're currently in transition process or moving, let me know how you're feeling. And thank you for listening to this long session. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.